Grüß, willkommen in einem aufregendes video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 26 of my organisational series of videos. In this video I'll cover the British infantry divisions and how they were structured during the war. This structure could also apply to other Commonwealth divisions, but my main focus are British divisions raised in the UK. I created this video in order to assist my efforts in creating army lists for a number of different micro-army sets of rules. I found it surprisingly difficult in getting accurate information on this subject. Either I could obtain an accurate snapshot of formation, but could not obtain info on the changes which occurred, or there was a serious mismatch between the formal organisation and the actual organisation in the field. A quick caveat, my analysis of TO&E in this video has been focused on creating army lists for micro-army sets of rules. As a result, it may not be similar to a typical historical analysis of it, so be warned. A quick note about my sources. In some cases I've obtained high quality official structures, in other cases unreliable TO&E diagrams. The bulk of my information comes from the excellent Niehorster documents. In my case I use the source from Carl and the www.niehorster.org site. In this particular video on the UK British divisions, I particularly relied on Niehorster. A quick clarification, I do not normally include transport supply signals and other administrative formations. My main focus is combat troops, although in an emergency non-combat troops often found themselves in combat, so perhaps I should include it, but I don't. The first infantry division structure for World War II is called Org 1 and consists of 3 infantry brigades, 1 artillery brigade and an engineer battalion. Other formations are often attached, such as an MG battalion and a reconnaissance regiments. I'm basing these structures on the Niehorster TO&Es. There's an excellent single document that they publish which breaks out the British divisions into Org 1, 2, 3, etc. And that's what I'll be following in this particular video. Let's now drill down into the infantry brigade in more detail. The infantry brigade consists of 3 infantry battalion-sized formations, each consisting of 4 infantry companies and a heavy weapon company. The infantry company was small compared with the German company at 100 men. On the other hand, the heavy weapons company was reasonably large, providing extremely good support. The artillery brigade contained all the artillery and anti-tank formations. Starting with the artillery, there were 3 artillery regiments consisting of 2 batteries of 12 guns each. The British used the rather light 25-pounder or 88mm howitzer, but to make up for this, each battery contained a large number of tubes, giving the battery significant punch. In September 1939, the batteries were equipped with the 18-pounders, which was even smaller, but by May 1940 this was replaced with the 25-pounder. Some infantry divisions contain an additional 4.5-inch battery. The anti-tank regiment consisted of 4 batteries of 12 2-pounder anti-tank guns. These would have been distributed to the infantry as required. The engineer battalion consisted of 3 engineer companies, which included Bren gun carriers with machine guns, so was reasonably well armed for engineers. The machine gun battalions were designated corps troops, and 1 battalion was typically allocated per infantry division. Each machine gun battalion had 48 Vickers medium machine guns, divided into 4 companies. In theory, each infantry division contained a single armoured cavalry regiment, which was equipped with light tanks. However, apart from 3 infantry divisions, these formations were removed from the other divisions and consolidated. By the end of March 1940, 2 armoured reconnaissance brigades were formed in France, each consisting of 2 divisional cavalry regiments transferred from their original infantry division formations. 3 more regiments continued with their parent infantry divisions during the campaign of 1940. The fiasco of 1940-41, that's basically France, Greece, Crete, etc., exposed several weaknesses in the TO&E charts for the British infantry divisions. Numerous changes were made to rectify some of these problems, which the British called Org 2. In this case I'm showing the Org 2 divisions, which were based in the UK. The overseas divisions retained the reconnaissance regiment. One major item to be noted on these charts, this chart and the following chart, is the overstatement of title given to smaller British units, whereby the regiments, the British regiments, were in actual strength more closely related to a battalion. A squadron battalion usually was a company, and a troop company was normally a platoon in strength. When we drill down into the infantry brigades in this new Org 2 structure in more detail, the biggest change was the increase in firepower of the mortar and carrier platoons and the increase in manpower of the rifle platoons. The infantry battalion HQ mortar platoon was now increased from 2 weapons to 6. The 4 rifle companies were now increased in strength to over 120 men each. The artillery regiments were now organised into 3 batteries of 8 25-pounders each. Actually, to the best of my knowledge, when the 25-pounders were deployed, this was always the structure. The larger batteries were primarily related to the 18-pounders. The divisional anti-tank regiments were increased with an additional troop for each battery, giving each battery 16 anti-tank guns. The artillery brigade now contained an anti-aircraft regiment consisting of 13 40mm Bofors guns each. Clearly the German aircraft had left a lasting impression with the British from their experiences in France in 1940. There was no changes to the engineer battalion in this new organisational structure. While this had no tangible effect, the British now added the machine gun battalions in the formal formation structure of the infantry division. It was now organic rather than attached. Prior to this, it was attached on an ad hoc basis, although typically every division did get one of these guys. I'm uncertain what impact this actually would have had, but as these formations would have been distributed to the infantry on a permanent base, at least now the MG battalion was far more integrated than it may have been before. The guys knew each other and could work together in a more efficient manner in a crisis, for example. Divisions which lacked the reconnaissance regiment would be equipped with a reconnaissance company. This was common for divisions in the UK. In the desert, the reconnaissance regiment was retained, but often the divisional commander would not know what to do with the formation and would often use it in the front line instead of its intended function. In the desert, the infantry divisions experienced a number of changes based on experiences in combat and, of course, availability of equipment. These included changes in the infantry battalion, anti-tank regiment and engineer battalion. During 1942, the 6-pounder anti-tank gun began replacing the 2-pounders in the anti-tank batteries. The surplus 2-pounder anti-tank guns were allocated to the infantry battalion HQ company, providing the infantry battalion additional anti-tank capability. The infantry company manpower dropped to 109 men each, from the previous 124 men each. Deleted entirely were the 2-inch mortar team and the platoon anti-tank rifles. When we drill down into the artillery brigades during 1942, as indicated earlier, the more potent 6-pounder anti-tank gun began to reach regiments in North Africa, gradually replacing the 2-pounders. A number of infantry divisions in the theatre, however, fielded a mixture of guns, with 48 6-pounders and 16 2-pounder weapons in their anti-tank regiments in total. The division did not lose any of its 2-pounder anti-tank guns, with the surplus 2-pounders allocated to the infantry battalions, again, as indicated earlier. The engineer battalions experienced a drop in the number of Bren gun carriers and anti-tank rifle numbers, but was otherwise unchanged. While not an official change, more tweaking occurred in the desert. Changes occurred in the infantry company, anti-tank batteries and armoured cavalry reconnaissance regiment, primarily between January and May 1943. The infantry company manpower level increased, reversing the previous decreased change. On the other hand, the heavy weapons company experienced a drop in manpower. It's possible this represents just a rearrangement of troops within the battalion. The British were also introducing the new 17-pounder anti-tank gun, possibly one of the best anti-tank guns used by any combatant in World War II. The initial 17-pounders used the 25-pounder mount, which did limit its effectiveness in ambushing enemy armour. Many anti-tank batteries contained a mix of 6-pounders and 17-pounder guns. The Armoured Cavalry Reconnaissance Regiment was receiving new equipment, with heavier armoured cars being introduced, replacing the lighter scout cars. In addition, 2-pounder anti-tank guns were replacing the anti-tank rifles, giving this formation greater anti-armour capability. In July 1943, the British undertook a new official infantry divisional structure called Org 3. This represents significant changes which were primarily designed to deal with the expected warfare in France and obviously Italy as well. The changes initially affected the divisions in the UK. The biggest change was the introduction of the Piat, which is basically a man-portable anti-tank weapon, in the infantry companies, as well as an increase in the number of light machine guns mounted in Bren gun carriers. The Heavy Weapons Company was equipped with 6-pounder anti-tank guns, although the total number of guns was reduced from 8 to 6 tubes. Within the artillery brigades, the manpower of each artillery battery was reducing, and in addition, the Bitchute, that's the anti-tank or man-portable anti-tank weapon, added. I suspect the manpower issues, or that manpower issues, were beginning to cause the British overall problems manning all their formations. The anti-tank regiment received 17-pounders on the correct mount, with each battery consisting of 8 6-pounders and 4 17-pounders. The manpower levels of each of those batteries rose, no doubt because 17-pounders needed more men. Apart from the introduction of the Bitchute to the engineer companies, the battalion now contained a bridging company. This was to deal with the changing nature of warfare, specifically what was expected in France. Not many rivers in the desert, but certainly a lot more in Europe. There were some minor changes to the Armoured Reconnaissance Regiment, primarily around the 3-inch mortars and also scout car numbers in the headquarters company. Once the Allies had forced the Axis forces out of Africa, they implemented the Org 3 structure for their divisions. That's in the Mediterranean. The main difference with the UK divisions was the Reconnaissance Regiment. While the changes were only minor, the divisions which landed in Italy had a different armoured car scout car mix in their reconnaissance regiments, with more armoured cars and less scout cars in each company. In addition, the Heavy Weapons Company utilised 6-pounder anti-tank guns, giving this formation significantly greater punch. For the invasion of France, a number of additional changes were implemented to increase the combat effectiveness or capability of the infantry divisions. Additional light machine guns were added to the infantry companies. The anti-tank company increased its complement of 17-pounders. Self-propelled anti-aircraft guns were added to the anti-aircraft batteries, and the machine gun battalion was returned, replacing the support battalion. However, by the end of 1944, many of these changes were reversed. Due to a lack of manpower and the lack of German aircraft to counter, the British removed most of the self-propelled weapons from the anti-aircraft battery and re-added the 4th battery to the battalion. Apart from this minor change, the infantry divisions remained unchanged until the end of the war. It should be noted the video is mainly based on research which was designed to create army lists for micro-armour rules which used a platoon or a company as its basic element or base. It's not focused on the very low-level structure of any formation. At a platoon, and more so at company scale, it can be difficult to obtain accurate manpower values in the field. However, at a battalion level, I find it easy to obtain this information. I'm not certain why this is the case, but as in World War II, the basic manoeuvre element of an army tended to be the battalion, I expected there was a lot more focus on recording manpower levels and equipment levels at a battalion level. And so we come to a close of my episode 26 of my organisational series of videos covering the British infantry divisions and how they were structured and how they changed during the war. Alle guten Dinge, kommen zu einem Ende.